Hello everyone, my name is John Bussart. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. I help support HPE servers, blade system storage, as well as networking technology solutions. In my videos, what I like to do is show you a slide from a popular PowerPoint and then demonstrate to you what that means in the management context. Today we're going to continue on our discussion with HPE's Morpheus VM Essentials, and we're going to talk about the native backup and recovery solutions that are integrated at no cost into this solution. Right, first and foremost would be the snapshotting technology. You can think of the snapshotting technology as you would any virtualized environments snapshotting technologies. These are point-in-time copies of the virtual machine. They're not really meant to replace backups that are in your environment. You really want to take these and get rid of them as quickly as possible. So, for example, if I have a patch or an update I need to apply to a VM, right, I might take a snapshot before I apply that patch, right? And then I would go and apply that patch. If I like the outcome of that, right, I'd go back and delete the snapshot. But if I did not like the outcome of the patch, I'd have a place I'd be able to revert to. There's also what this slide calls is orchestrated backup and recovery. So you do have the ability to schedule backups in this environment, and these backups by default will go on the cluster within the infrastructure, but what you really want to do is offload those to something external. So these can certainly be external backups within the environment, right? And the solution does work if you integrate both VMware as VM Essentials into this environment. Right, but again, you can offload those backups. You could send them to S3, you could send them to NFS, you could send them to CIFS. Right, these are schedulable. They can be full backups and then can be incremental backups. I will say that they're probably not as elaborate as some of this third-party software can do that's out there, but they certainly will get you by, and they are included with the package, again, with no additional cost. So, with all that being said, let's explore this management context. All right, here I am on the dashboard in VM Essentials. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be working with today. So if I go under Infrastructure and Clouds, you'll see I have both a VMware environment as well as a Morpheus VM Essentials environment integrated into this infrastructure. All right, if I go into the VM Essentials Cloud, right, and then select the cluster, and then look at storage, you'll see that I'm using iSCSI storage over here. So this is where my virtual machines go inside this environment. When I take snapshots, the snapshots will exist on this storage. Now this storage is at a cluster level. Again, this is where my virtual machine files go. So in VMware, that would be like a VMDK file, but because this is VM Essentials, we'll be putting QCOW2 files up there. Now this storage is different than if we look at storage at an infrastructure level. So here we are at infrastructure. I'm going to go to storage down here. So this storage is available to everything within this environment. Right? For example, if I added an S3 repository here, I can make that available for both backups in VMware environments as well as VM Essentials environments. In my case, what I have is a file share that's over. It's an NF file share. I'll say this isn't anything to write home about. I'm just using some open source software to make this available in the environment, right? But you could see that I do have this available, and if I go in and edit this, you'll see that I've made this available as a default backup target. So whenever I take backups, they'll go up here, and it's also my default virtual image store. And that image store would be the location for my virtual images. But we could add a variety of things here. We got CIFS, we got NFS, we could even do more local storage if we wanted to. All right, so let's go and take a look at our library and virtual images. So again, this is where my virtual images exist, my ISOs and things like that. Those will exist on that external NFS storage. I'm mainly bringing you here to show you that right now I only have ISOs within this environment. And this will change as we kind of go through this demonstration. So first, let's work with snapshots. So I'm going to go over to provisioning and incidences. And I'm going to scroll down to a virtual machine I have over here called snapshots. We're going to select that. All right, now at the instance level, right, I will have backups. I will also see under actions that I'll have snapshots as well as backups listed. All right, if I select backups over here, you will see that I have some traditional backups going on up here, but I also have snapshots down here. So I could take a snapshot if I wanted to. So let's go do that. You go under Actions. I'm going to create snapshot. I think I'll change the name to Ingram Micro. And I'll complete. Now, if it doesn't show up right away, it will show up. But if it doesn't, you can just do a refresh over here, and you'll see that exists. So now I have a point-in-time copy that I could revert to. And if I wanted to get rid of it, I could just click Delete over here. Right? And again, if it doesn't show up quick enough, we can do a refresh. And you'll see it's disappeared. All right, let's get into a console on this virtual machine. So we can see that this VM has a whole bunch of PDF files in there. This is a little bit of a mess. So maybe I want to get rid of all that. And I'm sorry for the resolution. I'm just doing it this way to the scaling is good. The font size is good. So now I've deleted these files, and maybe I forgot I needed to keep some of those files available. What I can do is I can go back up to backups here. I can go down and then click Revert, and we can revert that machine. Now if I scroll up, again we can do a refresh. It'll show in a little bit, but if I do a refresh, you can see the snapshots being reverted over here. We can also go up here and we see the snapshots being reverted up here. We can also go into history and see the snapshots being reverted. All right, so we'll come back in a little bit and we will see how that snapshot recovered, or see how the virtual machine state is a little bit later on. All right, so let's take a look at some other solutions that exist, or let's look at the backup technology. So I have two VMs here. I have this backup VM, and I also have this back me up VM. This one has backup jobs on it, so if I click on backup, I look at backups, you'll see I have a few backups that exist here. Now I have different actions with these backups. I could download them, so I'll just click on that real quick, and you can see a file is downloading here. All right, so this is going to be a big old QCOW file that's zipped up. So for example, I actually have one of these downloaded over here, and if I open this up, you can see it's a QCOW file as well as a JSON file that comes down. So you can download them and transport them if you want to. I would say this is something that you could do in VMware as well. It's nice to be able to touch your virtual machine hard drive files. Just keep in mind, if you do it in this fashion, you're going to need space to be able to hold that virtual machine. So if you have a 2 terabyte virtual machine, you're going to need to be able to drop that down somewhere, on space within your local environment. But you don't have to do that. You could certainly revert these VMs if you wanted to. So if I wanted to revert to this point, I would just click Restore. It's going to create a new incident for me and bring the environment. But I'm going to do that a little bit later. How did we get to this point where we have backups that exist? So let's go over and take a look at the other virtual machine that I have set up for us, and that's the Back Me Up. This is the one that's asking to be backed up, so I'm going to click on that. Again, I'm going to go under Backups. You can see I don't have backups configured for this, so I'm going to need to add a backup over here. All right, that's the incident. I'm going to back up. I'm going to click Next. It's going to ask me some questions. I could change what storage platform I want to place that on. Keep in mind that your backup external shared storage can be different from your library backup storage if you wanted to. All right, there's the job name. There is a schedule. You can pick, these are in their kind of default, but we could add our own if we wanted to. So let's do that real quick. So let me cancel that. Let's talk a little bit about how that works. So if I go up to Library and Automation, all right, we see we have Executive Scheduling over here. Now, I don't have anything in here, so I'm going to click Add. All right, we'll give it a name. I don't know, we'll call it our Ingram Micro Schedule here. And then we could set a schedule. So if you're familiar with Linux and you've done cron tab files, this format should look familiar. I know a lot of us are not, and that's why they have this down here. So I could say, I want to take a snap every day. Right? And maybe I want to do it at 1 o'clock as well as 2100 hours. And maybe I want to do it at the bottom of the hour. All right, so I could set that up. You can see it filled that out for me up here. And I could click save. And now I could call that as a part of a backup schedule if I wanted to. And many other things. So let's go back over to incidences. Let's go back to back me up. Going to go into backups. Going to add a backup. I click next. All right, in this case, let's take the drop-down schedule. We could see the 2 original entities as well as my new Ingram micro schedule. I'll also do synthetic backups, right? Aggregate all your incremental backups, right? And I have that set for Sunday at midnight. So I'm going to click complete. And now you can see that this is filled out. Now there are no backups that exist. If I want to take a backup, an ad hoc backup, I could just go up to actions at this point and click backup. And if you don't see this when you click on actions, it means you haven't configured backups. So I'm going to click backup. I'm going to click OK. And we can see the backup job is starting over here. Once again, we could see that happening up here as well. If I go into history, you'll see the backup again is happening over here. All right, so we're backing up this virtual machine. All right, so let's talk about restoring a virtual machine while this is backing up. So I'm going to go over to provisioning and instances. All right, and we originally looked at this virtual machine. All right, before I go in and restore that, again, I want to remind you about our library over here. We just have ISOs in this library right now. All right, so I'm going to back provisioning and incidences. Go back to this VM. All right, we're going to backups. And now we can restore that. And again, I could download the zipped up file, or I could just click restore. All right, it's going to create a new incident for me. And now this is going to look like a creation of a new incident for a virtual machine in our environment. We could change these names, these entities if we wanted to. I'm not going to do any of that. We're just going to kind of plug on through. We could apply some tasks. We could even add it back up to this. Right, and we're going to click complete. Right. And once again, we could see the restore happening over here. You can see that entity is happening up here. And once again, in history, you could see that happening over here. And we could certainly get more information if we wanted to. All right, so we're backing up a VM. We're reverting a snapshot, and we've created a backup schedule in our environment as well as restoring a virtual machine. So let's take a look at some other things while we're waiting for this to happen. If I go up to provisioning up here, we can see I've got library infrastructure as well as backups. I would say I don't spend a lot of time in here, but it is a good place to go and to get an overview of what's being backed up within your environment. And if they're being successful, you could look at the jobs over here. And if you notice, this menu just kind of opened up sideways over here. All right, we can see the backup jobs, or what VMs don't have a backup job on them. You could actually see the backups over here. All right, and we can also see our history. All right, so another thing I'm going to show you, when you do a recovery of a virtual machine, what will happen, and again, that's what we're doing with this one here. We're doing a recovery. So what happens is when you go over to actions and restore, it will take this virtual machine backup file from your external repository, and then it will copy that into your image library. All right, and if we go up to library and virtual images, we can see we no longer just have ISOs over here. We have this QCOW2. So what it'll do is that it's going to copy that virtual machine from backups into your image library. And then once it's inside the image library, it'll clone that off to a virtual machine. So quite obviously, this is going to take a little bit of time. You can watch the time down here. What I will tell you is I am working with the nested virtual machine environment. I do have external storage on this, as well as my NFS storage is a little bit slow. So don't go with these exact times as far as your production environment is how this would go. But I'm going to fast forward the time a little bit as these recoveries, and I'll bring you back to some important places that are in here. But again, if you want to look at time, just take a peek down here. All right, so let's take a look. Looks like our snapshot restored. So let's go over to incidences and let's take a look at our virtual machine here. So we'll click snapshot. All right, we'll go over to console. All right, we can see we've rebooted, so let me send this thing a Control-Alt-Delete. Let's log in. And we can see that we have all our files back within this environment. So we successfully did revert our snapshot. We're still waiting for our backup to go through, as well as our restoration. So we'll come back and take a look at those in a little bit. Now, while we're waiting here, why don't we take a quick look at the machine that's being backed up right now. So if I go over to provisioning and incidences, we're going to look at this one here. Back me up. All right, see, it's almost done. All right, if I go over to backups here, you could see that we have this little anti-mark letting us know that our backup is in progress. Yep, it looks like our backup jobs have changed here, so we can see that we're still in the restore process. But it looks like the backup's done. So let's go over to provisioning, incidences, take a look at this back me up machine. Again, look under backups, and now instead of that anti-sign, we see we have a full backup that exists. We got a succeed, and we've got a full backup that's listed. So if I take another backup, it will be an incremental backup. But again, I got my full options over here. All right, so we're still waiting for the restore to happen for this VM, so we'll sit tight, and I'll fast forward this a little bit, and we'll take a look at what we get after the restoration has happened. Alright, so our screen is changed a little bit down here. Looks like we're getting a little bit of a warning over here. If I go up to my tasks, we can see we got a restore process. We're actually provisioning at this point. So if I go over to my library and virtual images, we will see that our backup is now active. And if I go over to provisioning and instances, we will see that we're actually getting a restore happen here. Alright, so it looks like our backup job has completed. I no longer see a tick over here, right? And we get a notification there. If I go under provisioning and instances, let's scroll down, we could see our VM, or our instance for our VM exists here. We see it's got a green arrow, which means it's running now. When we select that and actually look at the console here, let's log in. Now this is just a simple Linux machine, so nothing to write home about, but it does demonstrate our capabilities here. One thing I will note is the backups don't move over with the new VM. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to back this up, you'd actually have to add a backup. So I hope that shows you the capabilities of this solution wrapped around backing up and protecting your environment. Again, this is integrated into the solution. There isn't anything you have to pay extra to do this, and they can be off-platform. In my case, I backed up and restored to an NFS share in my environment. So with all that being said, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for more videos.